There are people
Chosen
walking
ones.
this earth whose lives are wired into a different frequency. They're not ordinary, not by design. When life throws storms at them, they don't just survive, they recalibrate the weather. You've probably felt it before. The way their silence commands attention. The way their presence shifts tension into calm, as if the universe pauses to acknowledge them. That's not luck. That's alignment. They don't ask for spotlights because their light shows up uninvited. They don't speak loudly, yet their energy echoes through rooms. There's an invisible orbit around them, where chaos loses its grip and deceit finds no shelter. It's not because they're perfect. It's because they're covered. Not by shields made of steel, but by frequencies no eye can detect and no force can override. Their protection doesn't show up as thunder and lightning. It's subtler than that. Like a force field woven from stillness. Like being wrapped in the kind of peace that turns danger into detours. They move through trials like architects of invisible bridges, walking paths others can't even see. And every time you think they've been cornered, the walls rearrange themselves. They're not here to fight every battle. Most of their power isn't even in confrontation. It's in recalibration. They tune the energy of the room like a hidden hand on the volume dial, lowering the static, amplifying the clarity. And if you ever find yourself healed, comforted, or strangely awakened in their presence, it's not coincidence. It's transmission. People often mistake their calm for weakness, their empathy for naivety. But what they don't realize is this: these individuals are not just protected, they are protection. For others. For futures. For frequencies still unfolding. To oppose them is to misread the blueprint of your own safety. Because when you try to dismantle what's been divinely installed, the collapse comes for the builder. To try and diminish them is to challenge the current that carries them. It doesn't work. What surrounds them is not defense, it's design. They're not armed with rage. They're laced with presence. And when you cross them with malicious intent, what answers back isn't revenge, it's correction. It's the fabric of reality adjusting itself to preserve the one it recognizes as sacred. They don't even have to retaliate. The equation corrects itself. Reality moves in their favor not because they demand it, but because they embody it. You don't see the roots, but they're connected to something ancient, something precise. Their life becomes a lighthouse, not by preaching, but by simply being lit. And when you witness them walk unharmed through what should have destroyed them, know this: you just saw divine power in motion. Some minds don't just process information, they reshape the architecture of reality with the way they think. There are rare souls whose inner clarity sharpens like glass beneath pressure, who don't simply learn from life, but decode it. These individuals operate in silence, but their understanding runs like underground rivers, always moving, always nourishing everything they touch without seeking applause. They can unravel confusion with a sentence, not because they aim to sound wise, but because their thoughts are aligned with a deeper rhythm most never notice. They aren't consumed by noise, they filter it. Where others get tangled in chaos, they move through the clutter as if they were born knowing the exit routes. Their thinking is not flashy, it's surgical. Clean. Quiet. Unshakable. Ideas don't merely pass through them, they crystallize. They absorb lessons from pain and joy alike, folding them into an inner library that updates in real time. And when they speak, it's not about sounding correct. It's about unlocking something in others, dormant visions, forgotten dreams, clarity buried beneath years of doubt. Their wisdom doesn't speak to you. It speaks through you. What they offer isn't advice, it's ignition. They see crossroads not as choices, but as invitations to evolve. Others may search for answers. These people generate them. They don't push opinions, they offer vantage points. And standing in their presence, you don't feel corrected. You feel recalibrated. Opposing such minds out of arrogance is not just short-sighted, it's self-sabotage. Their brilliance doesn't seek to dominate, it's meant to illuminate. But those who approach with ego miss the doorway and walk straight into darkness. Their intellect isn't a wall. It's a passage. But it only opens to those who arrive with openness. When they enter a room, it's not their voice that silences the chaos, it's their insight. Their clarity pierces through pretense. Their stillness dismantles noise. And while others may command attention through spectacle, they shift paradigms through still presence. You don't just leave the conversation thinking differently, you leave as someone new. Engagement with them changes something in your neural wiring. Their minds function like tuning forks, resonating in a frequency that brings your dissonance into harmony. You don't walk away feeling impressed. You walk away feeling awakened. And that's the mark of true inner mastery, not how much they know, but how much of you they awaken in the process. Some individuals aren't avoided because they've done something wrong, but because they carry frequencies others can't decode. Their presence feels unfamiliar, not because it's flawed, but because it bends the walls of what society deems acceptable. When someone begins to radiate truth that hasn't yet been normalized, their very existence becomes disruptive. And disruption, even when it's divine, gets misunderstood. They aren't retreating from the world because they want to be left alone. They're creating distance because they've been met with suspicion for simply being tuned differently. What looks like withdrawal is really preservation. They've been watched, questioned, and often misjudged not for breaking laws, but for breaking illusions. And the cost of being ahead is often loneliness disguised as peace. Their silence is not void, it's fertile. It's the protected soil where the next version of humanity is being planted. The boundary lines they draw are not fences to keep people out, but sacred outlines to protect what's still forming. Entering their space without reverence is like walking into a symphony in progress and demanding it make sense before the final note. They aren't defensive out of paranoia, they're vigilant out of necessity. Repeated exposure to skepticism dulls vision. That's why they build shelters around their light, not because it's fragile, but because it's sacred. And sacred things don't belong in environments that demand proof before respect. Their solitude is not a curse, it's a chrysalis. One that invites metamorphosis, not just for them, but for those who are willing to listen instead of label. What the world calls isolation is actually incubation. Not a place of retreat, but a preparation ground where clarity sharpens and courage takes root. Judging these beings through the lens of normalcy is like measuring stars with a ruler. It will always fall short. What they offer cannot be cataloged by institutions or validated by mass approval. And when the collective finally catches up, the very ones they sideline will be the ones holding the map. To disregard their journey is to reject the future they're helping to midwife. And to walk into their orbit with force instead of curiosity is to miss the gift entirely. They are not here to fit into the mold, they are here to dissolve it. And when you make space to understand them, you don't just see them, you begin to see yourself in a way you never did before. Some people don't ask questions to find answers, they already feel what most haven't even realized yet. There are those whose awareness cuts through the static, whose perception doesn't rely on proof or explanation. The knowing isn't sourced from logic, it's pulled from the silence behind people's words, the tension behind their smiles, the patterns no one else is watching. While others are scanning the surface, they're already 10 layers beneath. They notice the pauses between your sentences. They read the shift in your breathing. They sense what's left unsaid with more clarity than what's spoken aloud. Their gift isn't theatrical, it's surgical. And when they look at you, it's like they're reading a memory you haven't written yet. This inner radar doesn't make them controlling, it makes them understanding. They walk into spaces and instantly pick up what's fragmented, what's tense, what's out of place. They don't diagnose to feel important, they listen to offer alignment. People leave their presence feeling seen for the first time in years, and they don't even realize why. What makes them powerful isn't foresight, it's emotional fluency. They can translate confusion into clarity, tension into truth, and conflict into compassion. Not because they study people, but because they feel them. Even when someone's intentions are buried under layers of performance, they can touch the original motive like it's written in light. They don't rely on data points or persuasion. Their decisions come from alignment with an inner compass so precise, it makes the external noise irrelevant. And while many chase logic to gain certainty, these rare ones sit with stillness and receive answers that logic can't reach. Not predictions, but patterns. Not guesses, gut knowing. Their presence shifts the energy before they even speak. People don't always understand why they trust them, why they open up, why they confess things they never planned to say. That's the magnetism of unfiltered truth. It draws honesty out of even the most guarded hearts. Not by force, but by resonance. This intuitive depth doesn't elevate them above others, it connects them beneath the surface of appearances. They don't look for masks to remove. They look for essence to meet. And in doing so, they offer a rare mirror, not the one that shows how you look, but the one that shows who you really are, before the world told you to be anything else. Some people don't just survive the fire, they figure out how to shape it. Not by extinguishing the flames, but by learning which parts can forge something new. There are individuals who walk through wreckage and emerge with a blueprint, who take the noise of chaos and somehow compose meaning from it. What breaks others builds them, not because pain doesn't reach them, but because they've learned to extract power from it. They're not immune to suffering, they just learned its language. In places where others crumble, they pause and listen. Instead of running from grief, they walk into it with open hands. Not to surrender, but to uncover what's hiding beneath it. They aren't waiting for things to get better. They become the shift. There's no coincidence in how they recover. The transformation you witness isn't random, it's structured. It's not luck. It's layered choice, deep self-awareness, and the hard-earned wisdom that nothing has to be wasted, not even despair. They reframe collapse as construction, using the fragments to build something the pain could never destroy. They aren't trying to erase the dark, they're decoding it. They see sorrow as an ingredient, not an ending. Every bruise becomes blueprint. Every loss, a whisper towards something essential. While the world looks for escape, they lean in and ask, what is this here to teach? And from that question, miracles begin. This is an inspiration. It's transformation. And it's contagious. Being around them rearranges your perception of what's possible. They don't preach healing, they radiate it. You start realizing that even your worst days can be rewritten. That what felt like punishment was actually a path to something stronger. And that shift doesn't come through force, it comes through presence. They bring with them a field of permission. A quiet, invisible invitation that says, you can release this. You can turn it. You can be different now. And when you accept that, you begin to realize that pain was never the enemy, it was the invitation. Their life is proof that growth isn't about avoiding damage, but about choosing what to do with the debris. They aren't magical. They're masterful. And they show us that even when everything breaks, there's still a blueprint buried inside the ashes, waiting for someone brave enough to rebuild it into light. There are those who carry information not gathered from books or broadcasts, but encoded into the rhythm of their being. Their insights don't come from noise, they come from stillness. While most absorb what the world provides, they download what the world has forgotten. The truths they carry didn't arrive, they've always been there, quietly burning beneath their ribs. What they hold isn't made for the masses. It's layered, living, and often hidden in plain sight. Not because they want to withhold it, but because the world rarely has the language to understand it. Their knowledge doesn't shout, it waits. And when it does speak, it doesn't explain, it awakens. You might pass one on the street and feel something shift. Not because they said something, but because something within you heard something. They're not teachers in the traditional sense. They don't hold classrooms. They are the classroom. Every glance, every moment of presence carries encoded impressions that stir memories you didn't know you had. They speak in frequencies, not formulas. Their wisdom doesn't aim to impress, it aims to unlock. Sometimes it comes in a single phrase that lingers for days. Other times, it arrives in a silence that reorders the chaos inside you. They aren't here to prove a point. They're here to remind you that you already know, you've just forgotten where to look. This kind of knowledge doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives like a forgotten dream, quiet but disruptive. A sudden shift in your inner compass. A realization you can't trace, but can't unsee. They don't push you toward belief. They guide you toward remembrance. And in doing so, they hand you the missing key to your own awareness. They're not defined by credentials or recognition. Their authority comes from clarity. From pattern recognition that surpasses logic. From seeing the unseen thread between seemingly unrelated events. From understanding that truth isn't just what's told, it's what echoes in the soul long after the words fade. Engaging with them isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it feels like standing too close to a mirror you weren't ready for. But what you see there, if you're willing to look, isn't just their reflection. It's yours, clearer than you've ever known it. They don't demand your attention. They pull it without asking. To dismiss them is to miss the whisper behind the noise. To misjudge them is to overlook the door behind the wall. They're not trying to be understood by everyone. They're waiting to be recognized by the ones ready to receive. And when that moment happens, it doesn't feel like learning something new. It feels like remembering who you were before the forgetting. Their presence is a living archive. A breathing document of what the world has lost and what it's still capable of reclaiming. To stand near them is to feel history and destiny woven into a single thread, waiting, just waiting, to be pulled into your hands. There are those among us who don't fit within the outlines of expectation, not because they are flawed, but because they were never meant to be traced. Their existence bends the narrative. Their presence bends the rules. They live at the edge of what's explainable and carry within them fragments of a much older, deeper language, one not spoken, but felt. These beings are not here to demand attention. They are not loud about their brilliance, nor boastful about their vision. And yet, when they move, the energy shifts. When they speak, the air listens. They are walking catalysts, those who unknowingly stretch the boundaries of reality for anyone brave enough to walk beside them. To engage with them is not simply to have a conversation. It's to step into a field of recalibration. You leave lighter, clearer, more aligned. They don't fix you. They don't need to. They remind you of what you were before the confusion. And if you let them, they'll guide you back to the version of yourself you forgot how to access. Still, their path is not paved with celebration. More often, it's littered with misunderstanding. Because what the world does not understand, it often attempts to shrink. And what cannot be controlled is labeled as dangerous. They've learned, painfully, that being different is rarely received as a gift. They are not separate by choice. They are separate by necessity. To preserve the frequency they carry, they've had to detach from the noise that tries to drown it. It's not avoidance. It's maintenance. Not pride. not ego. It's sacred protection of something too easily broken in the hands of the unaware. Many confuse their boundaries for arrogance. Many mistake their silence for coldness. But what they're really doing is filtering what can reach them and what deserves to. Not because they think they are better, but because they know how fragile vision becomes when exposed to unfiltered chaos. To reject them is to reject a mirror. One that shows not who you've been told to be, but who you truly are beneath all the costumes. They don't reflect your image, they reflect your essence. And that kind of reflection can be too raw for those not ready to remember what they've buried. So we circle back to a choice, one that society must make with intention. Will we continue to exile the ones who break molds, or will we learn to see them as blueprints of what's possible? They are not here to fit in. They are here to expand what an even means. Respecting them isn't about admiration. It's about alignment. It's not about placing them on pedestals. It's about recognizing that what they hold can't be found through conventional means. It must be felt, welcomed, and honored on its own terms, in its own timing. To walk with them is not to be led, it's to be invited into a space where truth breathes differently. Where time stretches. Where meaning deepens. Where the ordinary is rearranged into something sacred. And the only requirement is your willingness to unlearn what you thought you knew. Harmony with them isn't about always agreeing. It's about listening through the surface. It's about holding space for discomfort long enough to find the wisdom hiding underneath it. It's about meeting them halfway, not with skepticism, but with curiosity. Not with fear, but with trust. Because once we make room for them to be exactly as they are, without trimming their wings or dulling their glow, we begin to access something collective. Something greater. A potential we couldn't reach alone. A blueprint for healing we didn't know we needed. In that recognition, we no longer see them as anomalies. We see them as architects. Architects of futures not yet born, of systems not yet built, of truths not yet spoken. And maybe we stop fearing their difference and start protecting it. So let this not end in admiration, but in decision. The decision to stop resisting what doesn't make sense right away. The decision to lean into the mystery instead of running from it. The decision to honor the light even when it flickers in forms we've never seen. For only then does the world begin to shift, not through force, not through conquest, but through reverence. And in that reverence, something ancient awakens in all of us, the remembering that we, too, were once made of the same mystery.